Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Into the 99 podcast, where we've got 99 cards. Commander is number one. I am your hostess with the mostest, NekroZach, joined by Brian, Ryan, and Lotus. Hi, guys. How are you doing?
Wonderful. How are you on
Hey,
this Saturday afternoon, Zach?
I am doing well. Brian, are you okay? I didn't hear you
I was gonna
respond to
I
me
was gonna
being
chime in,
cheerful.
but I was gonna chime in, but everyone else is talking, so I was gonna let everyone else have their turn.
How Canadian of you.
I know, right? I'll gladly go last.
How are Buchu doing today?
Oh, excellent. The sun's shining. I think it's
Wonderful.
a bit like another 20-degree day, which for April is weird,
what's this thing you call sun?
right?
So, notably missing from the cast today are Dan and Benson. I wasn't made aware of why they're missing, but Lotus says that she has a clue. Would you care to fill the rest of us in and those at home listening?
Well, the last time I heard from a classmate was Dan was drinking a potion from a Quandrix class and kind of passed out. So Benson's on a magic quest to give true love's kiss, apparently.
That's just too good.
That's so heartwarming. Normally, you guys are doing like a bunch of scary stuff. That one's actually like someone could write a book or a movie or a whole franchise around that.
Well, school's now in session, so
Fan fiction coming soon.
Fanfic.
So
So,
I guess with the just quickly with the pre-release, what this weekend? What schools did everyone join?
My heart
Well-
lies with Witherbloom, but the sorting hat shows me as Silver Quill, and I don't agree with it.
Lotus, what school you went for? You went for Lorehold, right?
No, I'm only doing this in sort of honor of you. My school is Quandrix because math is magic and math is for blockers.
Sounds about right.
You do like banding quite a bit. It doesn't get more mathy than that.
Yeah, I do like banding, although that's in white. But the amount of fractals I made last night was insane.
I don't think I would have chose the word insane. It was probably belligerent. I think that's the
Yeah.
correct phrase.
My life total felt very, very violated.
What college did you join, Brian?
Do you know what? I had that argument with the sorting hat. The stylish. I like the stylish looks of the Silver Quill. I think I'd fit right in. I like a nice looking uniform, right? But I think the spells and the power of Quandrix has me. So I was there to watch Dan take that potion.
Well, I thought for sure I was going to be Witherbloom with how I answered my questions, but I was actually Quandrix as well. I was very surprised. I took the test, screenshotted my results, and sent it to chat. Was like, huh?
Yeah, that was weird.
So I don't know, guys. I definitely didn't think I answered like Quandrix, but here we are. With that
Quandrix
being
best.
with that being said, we're, as the old saying goes, when the cat's away, the mice will play. So I'm gonna need you people at home and you lovely co-hosts of mine to strap in because we are doing a NekroZach deck tech today, which
Take two.
yes, take two Electric Boogaloo. This deck I originally built as soon as the commander was spoiled. So day one, no spoilers for the commander decks are in this deck, and nothing from Strixhaven because there really weren't Strixhaven cards when the commander was spoiled. We recorded this episode 2 weeks ago, Brian.
Yeah.
And there was some audio issues, so we had to scrap that. But Lotus was nice enough to let us use some of her audio for Brewing It Live, which you can catch every Sunday. So now we're going to redo this episode. So there are 3 things I like to do in Magic. Can one of you tell me what they are, or can all of you tell me what they are?
You like to play? Oh, I just have
One
to
at a
say,
time.
he likes to play in his trash.
I do. I am the trash man.
Hey, they make some good pay.
Apparently.
Okay, go ahead,
I was
Lotus.
I was just gonna say you get salty, you scoop, and then you shuffle a lot.
Oh, that sounds right up Zach's alley. Yeah, no, I'll concur. Those are the three things.
Well, so I guess if you're looking in a mirror, those are the things you guys see when I play with you. But for the viewers and listeners at home, I love to reanimate, I love to steal, and I love to copy. And today, we're doing two of those things. We're going to be reanimating and we're going to be making copies of things. But we're doing it in colors that I do not brew in ever. So we're doing this in Lorehold, and I'm not calling it by any other associated name with the colors. We're in red and white. We are doing my deck tech on Osgir the Reconstructor. 2 red and white. It's the face card for the Lorehold Commander deck. It's a giant artificer 4/4 vigilance. You can pay 1, sacrifice an artifact. Target creature you control gets +2/+0 until end of turn. You can pay X and tap Osgir. Exile an artifact card with mana value X from your graveyard. Create 2 tokens that are copies of the exiled card. You can only activate this as a sorcery. So we are doing, and what I brewed here is a kind of weird aristocrat graveyard themed deck in Lorehold. I do not like Boros. I like Mardu. I like, Naya kind of, but Lorehold just, I don't know, these spoilers did something to me, and I was super excited to brew this deck. So I have this deck here. It's kind of got a weird construct sub theme. It's not super pushed, but it comes into play later as we go on. I have to preference that because last time I didn't preference it correctly, and I was jumped on by 2 of the co-hosts that were helping me with the deck tech.
So
Brian.
I do have to, in honor of Benson on our first take, we should reference Lorehold as Borhold.
Borhold.
For Boros and Lorehold. Borhold.
Loros?
Loros. I like Loros better, but Borhold is what, pouring out for my homies.
Yeah, it was coined the first take that never made it to market.
So a couple things that I also want to talk about as we go on. When I originally talked about this deck tech, I really thought, because we didn't see anything with the commander deck, I really thought Wizards was going to make this a Voltron deck with equipment. And now, if you've seen the deck techs and you've seen the deck list and you've kind of like listened to what we've talked about, my list was very close to what Wizards end up doing with this deck. So I was super excited about that. It made me feel like, hey, I was doing something right, But I think this is going to be obviously an upgraded version of the deck tech. There are a lot of cards that are in here that you're going to be able to just buy the precon if you like this deck and be able to build and just kind of add on to, because that's what I ended up doing. So we're going to start, as I like to do, in the creature section. We'll just kind of bounce around. So like I said, this is going to be an artifact heavy deck with creatures, and the first one is Arcbond Slith. It's 2 for an artifact creature. Slith, it's a 0/0. When it deals combat damage to a player, you put a +1/+1 counter on it, and it has modular 1. This comes into play with a +1/+1 counter on it. When it's put into a graveyard, you may put its +1/+1 counters on target artifact creature. This is a mechanic I love. I love modular, but I haven't found a deck that I felt really worked the way I wanted to with modular. Last night, we got to do some play testing of these decks, and I actually got to use Arcbound Slith a couple times to pump a few of my creatures, and modular just seems like it's going to be a lot of fun in this deck because we're running a lot of different artifact creatures and we have a lot of different payoffs for our artifact creatures being big. So there are a few more modular creatures in this deck, and we'll touch on those as we go.
Yeah, the Slith actually put in a lot of work, and Slith is one of the characters or creature types that I wish there was more of, because I do enjoy if you do this, you get a +1/+1 counter for the other colors, but this modular one for this one, it did great last night. It gave you a big blocker that, it dying allowed you to have a big blocker that let you do stuff.
Yeah, and there are a few other creatures and a few other cards we'll talk about as we get to it, but I was able to reanimate that without having to exile it a few times, which was really nice. The next card that was in my list that was also in the precon is Felden of the Third Path. It's 1 red for a legendary creature, human artificer, 2/3. You can pay 2 and a red, you tap Felden, you create a token that's a copy of target creature card in your graveyard, except it's an artifact in addition to its other types. It gains haste, sack it at the beginning of the next end step. This is another great way to copy your things in the trash. We have a bunch of different things that we're going to want to throw away. We have a bunch of different things that people are going to want to remove. It ends up just doing a ton of work, and making copies of things is great. As you'll see moving forward, we have a lot of different ways we can utilize ETBs off of artifact creatures, or be able to make even more copies of the things that we have. So Felden's sweet. Does someone want to take the next card?
The next card is Foundry Inspector. It's 3 colorless for a 3/2 artifact creature construct. And it has artifact spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. This seems like an absolute no-brainer in this deck. There's really not much else to add.
Yeah, this one put in. It allowed him to put in some like quick drops yesterday. Yeah, and then anything that's running artifacts, if you can get them out faster, because most of them cost maybe 2 or 3 mana. So if you're like, I can play like 6 artifacts for 1 mana a piece, amazing, pure profit.
Yep.
Next up, we got Gadrak, the Crown Scourge, 2 and a red, legendary creature dragon. Flying, Gadrak the Crown Scourge can't attack unless you control 4 or more artifacts. Oh, well, that's not going to be a problem. And at the beginning of your end step, create a treasure token for each non-token creature that died this turn. And Gadrak is a 5/4.
See, we're going straight to H now, so I'm wondering where Goldspan Dragon is.
I didn't want to go too super heavy on the treasure theme, so Gadrak just seemed like good value. Goldspan Dragon is very good, but I didn't want to do it for this deck.
That's fair.
Makes
So
sense.
we go into H, which is Hellkite Igniter, 5 red for a dragon, flying haste 5/5. For 1 and a red, it gets +X/+0 until end of turn, where X is the number of artifacts you control.
Mr.
Just artifact fire breathing.
Yep. The big
It's
beefy
very-
dragon
It's very silly.
that could be used multiple times.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
gonna say you can stack it and it becomes very, very dumb. This is in the deck to close out the game. Dragons and artifacts are just best friends, as is in the typical fantasy lore. So having this guy in it, typically paying 7 for a 5/5 of flying is kind of rough, but paying 7 for a 5/5 flyer with haste feels much better. So this had a good place in the deck, I think.
Well, dragons love their treasure and trinkets, right? Makes
Yes,
sense.
Yeah.
yes, they do. The next card is Midnight. It's a 0-cost 1/1 construct. It's just a vanilla for 0, but the fact that it's a construct and it's a 0 can be really relevant as we move on. There are a lot of different, obviously, payoffs like Hellkite Igniter and a few other things in the deck that want to really utilize having a 0 drop. So being able to cast this whenever we want is pretty impactful. This is another insane card, I feel like, in this deck, and it's another closer in a bunch of different ways. It's Metalwork Colossus. It's an 11. It's 11 cost 10/10 construct. Metalwork Colossus costs X less to cast, where X is the total CMC of non-creature artifacts you control. Then you can sacrifice 2 artifacts and return Metalwork Colossus from your graveyard to your hand. In a lot of instances, this can just be free.
Yeah. I'm happy you did not draw this card last night.
It would have been very problematic because, like I've been saying, there are a bunch of different ways to really utilize our creatures. Metalwork Colossus is great just for the simple fact it's a 10/10 for 11, and you can, in a lot of cases, you're not going to be paying 11 for this guy. And if it's in the graveyard through, looting effects, we can sacrifice 2 artifacts and return it to from our graveyard to our hand. So it also enables what Osgir wants to do, right? By being able to put artifacts in the graveyard to make 2 more of them. So sometimes, like we were seeing issues last night where creatures were turning into frogs and getting getting kind of put out to pasture, so to speak. So being able to get rid of them in some fashion, or be able to get rid of like cards we can't normally interact with, is kind of nice with Metalwork Colossus. Or to do it at instant speed if someone's going to do that effect is pretty big.
This next card is an absolute favorite of mine, Mirror Battlesphere. It's a 7 mana for a 4/7 mirror construct. And when it enters the battlefield, create 4 1/1 colorless mirror artifact creature tokens. And whenever Mirror Battlesphere attacks, you can tap X untapped mirror you control. If you do, it gets +X/+0 and deals X damage to the player or planeswalker it's attacking. This card's hilarious.
So we've had artifact fire breathing. Now we have mirror fire breathing. This is another card that can essentially just end the game for someone. We have a bunch of different ways. Our commander can just outright make 2 of these, and they're going to come in massive. Well, we're going to come in with 4 additional, and that's just a lot of extra damage. But we also have other cards that are going to be able to copy this, so it just becomes very silly very quickly.
So the next one you've got is Phyrexian Triniform, a 9-mana 9/9 that when it dies it creates 3/3/3 golem artifact creature tokens, and then Encore for 12 if you didn't have enough tokens.
It does exactly what we kind of want to do in this deck. We can make multiple versions. We can make multiple versions of this in our deck without having to specifically cast this. We can either do it from the graveyard, or we can just sacrifice it to something else to get all the value we want, and then make 2 more, or encore it for 12. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I was just thinking of it because if it dies, then you just bring it back. I make 2 of them. Oh, they die. I get another 3. So you could have a potential of 9 3/3 golems if you really wanted.
And go ahead.
I was gonna say, did you have any opportunities to encore it last night?
No, it was pretty far down, unfortunately.
But this card, yeah.
Yes.
This card was the one that I was talking about that he was using with the Slith, which is for Phyrexian Walker. It's a 0 cost artifact creature that is a 0/3, and it has no fancy abilities or anything. But this thing became a 2/5 and just sat there.
It was a very good blocker. The cool thing is, in its Oracle text, it's actually a construct too, which is once again relevant to some of the things that I wanted to do in this deck. So, yeah, go for it.
This card seems sweet in this deck. Reckless Fireweaver, a colorless and red for a 1/3 human artificer. Whenever an artifact enters the battlefield under your control, Reckless Fireweaver deals 1 damage to each opponent. I see this card getting out of hand in this deck.
Super happy that did not drop yesterday.
Yes, I eventually got to a point where, spoilers, I had to ready Scrap Savant, which I'll read very quickly. He's a 4-drop, so 3 in a red for a planeswalker. He starts with 3 loyalty counters. You can +2 to discard up to 2 cards, then draw that many cards. You can -2, sacrifice an artifact. If you do, return target artifact card from your graveyard to the battlefield. Or you can -10, where you get an emblem with whenever an artifact is put into your graveyard from the battlefield, return that card to the battlefield at the beginning of the next end step. I'm not going to go too far into it, but I did get to -10 to ready, and if Reckless Fireweaver would have been on the battlefield, I don't think I would have lost that game. Even with 64 fractals. Yeah, Reckless Fireweaver is part of the Aristocrat kind of package that I like to run, but with it being centered to artifacts, it just seems kind of like a no-brainer in this deck.
Yeah.
This is another silly construct that I'm super happy I found a home for. It's Scuttling Doom Engine. It's a 6-drop 6/6. It can't be blocked by creatures with power 2 or less, and when it dies, it deals 6 damage to target opponent or planeswalker.
Looks like a crab.
It definitely looks like a crab. Should have been crab construct or
It's
crustacean
time for
construct.
crab.
Construct crab.
Well, it also seems like you can do a bunch of shenanigans with this, like sacking it to Oscar and then recurring it with Felden and Oscar, and then having it die more to deal more damage.
Yeah, there's just it's silly. Like I really wanted to abuse Oscar's ability as much as possible and then put as much redundancy as I could in the deck, and this just seems like so much fun. I saw this card, and like if I ever smile when I'm reading a card, I just instantly put it in the deck. It has to go in, and that's how I felt about this guy. Does someone want to take the next card?
Sure. Steel Overseer, 2 mana, 1/1 construct. Tap, put a +1 counter on each artifact creature you control. Again, just seems good in this.
Surprisingly, this was another card that was in the pre-con, and I didn't expect to see this in there. Like I said, I really thought it was going to be a Voltron equipment deck. So seeing Soul Overseer was great. I put it in because there are a bunch of Arcbound cards that I want to be able to really get a ton of value for with Steel Overseer, but it's very good in an artifact creature heavy deck.
So this
Can we?
Oh, sorry.
Can we back? I just want to back up to Scuttling Doom Engine for 1 second and read its flavor text. A masterwork of spite inspired by madness.
Looks it.
I feel like that's what you want. I love that card. It's so much fun.
Okay, go ahead, Brian. Sorry.
So we in the last, like when we first did our first take on this for Stuffy Doll, we also got on the topic of why is Brash Taunter not in here? But Stuffy Doll, the third best goblin. But Stuffy Doll makes sense because it is that whole, well, it's a construct, it's not a goblin. And Stuffy Doll costs 5, artifact creature construct. It's indestructible. And as Stuffy Doll enters the battlefield, choose a player. Whenever Stuffy Doll is dealt damage, it deals that much damage to the chosen player. Tap Stuffy Doll to deal 1 damage to itself. But wait, why not? Oh, it dies, and I make 2 Stuffy Dolls, and I name the other 2 players.
Yep, that's exactly my thought process. It's a construct already, which is great, and Brass Taunter is a billion times better than this card, but the fact that it is an artifact, we're going to get more value out of it in this deck specifically. In any other instance, you play Brass Taunter. It's better than this. This instant, it's not. So this is another card I was really, really excited about when it was spoiled, and the set that it was spoiled in, but I really couldn't find a home to utilize it. And I think in this deck, it just works beautifully. It's Traxos, Scourge of Krug. It's a 4-drop legendary artifact creature construct, 7/7. It has trample, and when it enters the battlefield, tapped and doesn't untap turn or untap step, but whenever you cast an Exoric spell, you untap Traxos. There are a lot of really, really degenerate combos you can do with that. I'm not doing any of those in the deck that I'm aware of. I literally just want to basically have Vigilance on this guy, and it's a 7/7 for 4. There are a lot of things that really care about it being a 7/7, and it's a construct. So it just seems good in this deck. Having multiple of these is also fine because we can get around the legendary text later on. So that does it for just the normal creatures. The next thing I want to go into is our I think we're going to do our sack outlets. So like any good deck that I build, there are a billion sack outlets because not only am I going to utilize it through, value, but also I think any commander deck you build should have a sack outlet in it because sometimes people are going to frogify your commander. Sometimes, people are just going to exile your stuff.
Or an elk.
That was
Okay.
why it's always me as well.
So having a sack outlet can protect you because it's better to be in the graveyard where you can potentially interact with it than in exile where you can't do anything about it. First card, and the first actual card I bought for this deck, Arcbound Ravager. It's a 2-drop artifact creature beast, and it's a 0/0. You can sacrifice an artifact, you put a +1/+1 counter on Arcbound Ravager, and it has modular 1.
I remember when this card was so much more expensive.
Yes, it has been reprinted into the ground, and it had like I think an F&M promo or something like that, so it became much more affordable. I've always wanted to play with this card. I've always wanted to play with modular, and this is the deck for that. We have a ton of artifacts. This is another way to put artifacts in our graveyard, but our payoff for this is like immense because our Arcbound Raptor is going to keep getting bigger, and when it dies, we can just move those counters to something else. It was like, to me, it's like what the Ozolith, the like baby Ozolith, you know what I mean? Like, it can store the counters on it and then move elsewhere. This next card, I was so excited. Yet another card I wanted to do something with. It's Bosch Iron Golem.
I saw it hit your graveyard, and I was like, oh no.
Yes, that's what I want. That's exactly what I want. So Bosch is an 8-drop. It's a legendary creature, artifact golem. It's a 6/7 with trample. Those are great stats, but that's not what we're here for. Its ability is 3 and a red. You sack an artifact. Bosch Iron Golem deals damage equal to that sacrificed creature's CMC to any target. You remember earlier where I was talking about Metalwork Colossus being very good in this deck?
Yeah.
Oh.
Bosch just goes over, palms Metalwork Colossus's head, and then throws it at someone. And does 11 damage.
Not a fan.
Seems fine.
You've also got Bryon's Stout Arm as well.
Yes, I do.
two red, white for a 4/4 giant warrior lifelink. Red and tap, sacrifice another creature. It deals damage equal to the sacrifice creature's power to target player. I wonder if this and Arnie Brokenbrow would do a good pairing.
I think so. I think it'd be great. I love, sacrificing stuff is already cool, but if I can throw it at someone, that's even better. Arcbound Ravager becomes insane, and he has lifelink, right? So I get to gain life. It's a win-win.
No, you don't need to gain life.
Like, I just want to be able to have either Bosch or Brian on the field, have Scuttling Doom Engine, throw Scuttling Doom Engine, and then do Scuttling Doom Engine's, death trigger on someone all in one turn, which is very reasonable to do.
So a total of 12 damage?
Yeah.
This next card, Goblin Welder, it's 1 red for a 1/1 Goblin Artificer. You can tap it to choose target artifact a player controls and target artifact card in that player's graveyard. If both targets are still legal as the ability resolves, the players simultaneously sacrifice the artifact and return the artifact card to the battlefield. I do not remember this card being that wordy.
Yeah, it's very silly. Now, do you think it's worded this way, Lotus, to prevent people from being able to respond to the ability? Is that?
It's to clear up things where someone would go, I'm going to sacrifice whatever this is on the battlefield. Oh, it's in my graveyard. I'm going to return that thing.
Right.
Hold on, I want to find the original printing and the wording on the original.
But we would
just to clarify how it works. They made it this wordy just to clarify that the artifact is sacrificed at the same time as the other one's returned.
So the original wording was just tap, exchange target artifact a player controls for target artifact card in that player's graveyard.
Yeah, it sounds like it needed some clearing up there.
So what I really like about this card, and I don't think a lot of people really think about it, is can be used proactively or retroactively, right? You can either sacrifice your Memnite for your Bosch that's in the graveyard, which is what I was hoping to do last night. Or if someone has something really scary, you can make them sacrifice that and reanimate that expedition map that can get any land.
Yep.
Not just basics.
I wonder who thought that.
I don't know, Brian. So Goblin Welder Suite. Another thing, goblins love artifacts. Makes sense that there are goblins in this deck.
And the next one is a card that I know all too well. It is Grinding Station. It costs 2. And it is an artifact, and you tap to sacrifice an artifact. Target player puts the top 3 cards of his or her library into his or her graveyard. Whenever an artifact comes into play, you may untap Grinding Station. I wonder who's getting milled.
So that's, once again, it can be used proactively or retroactively. You can use it to mill someone who decided they were going to Enlighten Tutor or Vampiric Tutor, or you can use it on yourself because you need to fill your graveyard a little bit more. We have a bunch of things to reanimate outside of Osgir and Felden. Or, once again, you just can mill someone out. It's very possible. You can get into loops in this deck where eventually you can just mill people entirely. This card could also be Blasting Station. I just like the practical applications of being able to mill myself as opposed to just outright doing damage. I didn't put Firing Emancipation in this deck, which felt very weird, but I think if you were to go that route, which is very reasonable, this should become Blasting Station.
Makes sense.
So this card, I feel, is super sweet, and I think more people need to be playing it. It's Martyr's Cause. It's 2 and a white for an enchantment. You can sacrifice a creature and prevent all damage to a creature or player from one source. People are going to see what we're trying to do in this deck. They're going to be very upset with you very often. So being able to fog specific damage is very, very good.
Like that 64/64.
Yeah. Or just a 5/5 frog.
Oh yeah, that's
My
true too.
commander will get through.
So Martyr's Cause is sweet, and once again, even if you don't have a real reason to use it, just being able to sacrifice a creature at instant speed is good. You should always play more sacrifice outlets. All right. This card. I was so excited. I finally found a home for this card because, once again, it has modular, and I love modular. This is the deck for it. It has Scrapyard Recombinder. It's a 3-drop 0/0 for a construct. It has modular too, so it's going to enter with 2+1/+1 counters. You can tap it. You sacrifice an artifact. You search your library for a construct card, reveal it, put it in your hand, then shuffle your library. This is why I am playing constructs like I am, outside of the constructs just being good. Being able to get my Metalwork Colossus, or being able to get the Memnite that I need to maybe do some weird combo, or even just Foundry Inspector. Like, people will Enlighten Tutor to get a Soul Ring. This is kind of what we're doing here. Instead of that, we're getting our Foundry Inspector to be able to make our stuff cheaper so we can be ahead of the curve.
Well, plus you're able to do this every single turn, or you probably have some sort of shenanigans to do it multiple times.
Yeah, it's very reasonable. And even too, worst case scenario, you can just make this thing huge. Like, I love this card. There's really no downside. So those are our sack outlets. They're sweet. They make me happy, but they don't make me nearly as happy as my reanimate pile.
Always. There always has to be one.
Oh, I think we have 11 in this section. I'm going to talk about the first one, and then I want you guys to talk about the rest. So the first one, it's another Arcbound card. It's Arcbound Reclaimer. It's a 4-drop Golem, which is very frustrating. It should be a construct. And it's a 0/0. It has modular 2, and you can remove a +1/+1 counter from Arcbound Reclaimer. Put target artifact card from your graveyard on top of your library. We can do this at instant speed to rebuy our artifacts. The thing that I like about Lorehol specifically than Boros is we have more of an ability to really have more value base. Like, we kind of can do what Feather does, right? Being able to have this card down and maybe replay our Wayfarer's Bauble that's in the deck. Being able to replay other things who just increase in value, whether it be card draw or what have you. This guy is going to help us to do it. And being able to put counters on it, which we can do, is going to make this card be used multiple times.
Yeah,
I do like the next one.
Well, why don't you get into it?
Yeah.
Let us know what's going on there.
Well, this was one of the new ones from the Kaldheim precon. Cosmic Intervention, 3 and a white, instant.
Yeah, the sturdy card.
It is. If a permanent you control would be put into the graveyard from the battlefield this turn, exile it instead. Return it to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step, and you can foretell it for 1 and a white. I honestly think this is better than Teferi's Protection sometimes. Or it's the next Teferi's Protection.
Well, it allows you to utilize sack engines, and then they just come back again. So if someone's on a board wipe and you don't want to lose everything, and you're playing Zack shenanigans, it's very good.
Well, the other thing that I think is actually better than Teferi's Protection is Teferi's Protection phases. This re-enters, causing all your ETBs again.
Exactly. I've said this to the group, and I've said it on the podcast a couple times, but I'm going to reiterate it here and now. I think this card is going to be very expensive if it doesn't get any kind of reprints in the near future. Since I've bought like 12 of these, no exaggeration. It is insane. It's a very powerful card. It's close. It's a lot like Second Sunrise, and Second Sunrise is kind of an expensive card too. But just with this having a limited printing and it being in a commander deck, like, pick these up. They're very good. I talked earlier already about being able to be proactive or retroactive, and this card is the same way. Like you guys said, if someone's going to wipe my field, nah, we're not having that. I'm going to Cosmic Intervention. Or if I need to re-ETB stuff, or need to do that value, or I want to just be able to get a bunch of my sacrifice triggers going, Cosmic Intervention is fine. Maybe, I mean, there's definitely a bunch of different ways you can utilize this in the deck. And
then, the tried and true method here, Mirror Retriever, 2 colorless, 1/1 mirror. When Mirror Retriever dies, return another target artifact card from your graveyard to your hand. Any artifact deck obviously going to be running this guy.
It's very good.
The next card is Pull from Eternity. It's 1 white for an instant. Put target face-up card that's removed from the game into its owner's graveyard. Just like I'm assuming just to get around shenanigans where people exile your graveyards and you want something back, or
well, he has to exile stuff for his commanders too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That too.
When I found myself gravitating to playing this card more and more because I have, like, not combo pieces but key pieces I want to be able to rebuy. I love rebuying my stuff. It is the best. So Pull from Eternity, being able to do it at instant speed. So, like, we can only use Osgir at sorcery speed. So maybe I want to, set up another good, big play, and I need to bring back my Metalwork Colossus or something silly. We can do that the turn before ours, so we can move into our turn being able to set up us in a good position. And two, like, this was one of the foils in the mystery booster, and they're super, super cheap. There's no reason to not slide this in a white deck.
Also, you can use it quite defensively as well. I don't know if people remember, there's a self-suspending cycle in the new commander decks. Once they cast, they resuspend. Well, they're exiled and they're face up. You can put that in the graveyard and technically remove that from the game.
You are 100% right.
Oh, wow.
Notably, it says face up for a reason, because there are cards that exile stuff face down. I'm looking at you, Gonti. We can't do anything about that, but
or foretold.
But we do have some outs. Just to keep that in mind. If you build this deck, you can get hosed by that. Just remember that.
Next up, we got Scrap Trawler, 3 colorless artifact creature construct. When Scrap Trawler or another artifact you control is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, return to your hand target artifact card in your graveyard with lesser converted mana cost. And this guy I know is combo piece to constantly recur artifacts.
Yep. So this card is actually in the precon. Mirror Retriever isn't. So if you do have them together, they will be able to bring each other back and forth. So it is a loop that can go as long as you want. So with Reckless Fireweaver, you can win the game like that if that loop isn't broken. I don't typically like playing combos. I just felt like this was a good place. Most of the time, I just want value. I don't really like ending games like that. I would much rather throw Metalwork Colossus at everyone multiple times. That's more of how I like to play. But I wanted to outline that because I felt like it was silly to have Scrap Trawler and not have Mirror Retriever in the deck because they are both very powerful. They both do good things. But once again, you do not have to play that way. I don't intend on doing it unless Brian makes me mad.
Which does happen.
Or if there is a 64-64 fractal.
This next card is Second Sunrise. It is a colorless white instant. Each player returns to play all artifact, creature, enchantment, and land cards that were put into his or her graveyard from play this turn. This card can do a lot of really, really, really ridiculous things, but is also incredibly good defensively and offensively in this deck.
I mentioned Cosmic Intervention does the same thing, but it doesn't to a degree because Second Sunrise is going to hit everyone, which I don't like. Like Brian said, it can be used, offense or defense. It can also be very political, which I love doing politics. Being able, someone does a board wipe, passes priority to me. I look over like, hey, Lotus, remember how, so-and-so is going to get rid of your board? What if I could make sure that doesn't happen? Or it
Makes
does,
sense.
and then you get all your triggers,
Or you're leaving alone.
So Second Sunrise is great. It can be used in a lot of different ways.
I presume Sun Titan is just value on a stick. It's a 6-mana 6/6 vigilance. When it enters the battlefield or attacks, which most people forget, you may return target permanent card with converted mana cost 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. So anything from a land up to C&C3.
Which is like a majority of Zack's artifacts.
I don't know if people realize this, but a lot of artifacts that are very, very good are 3 CMC or less. So it's one of my favorite white cards. I like playing it. There's not really much to say. It's good. And it was in the precon anyway, so why not?
Yeah, they've printed it a lot recently.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's getting cheaper, but it's still not as cheap as you would expect. It's like Soul Ring. No matter how many times they print it or reprint it, it's still going to be like $5.
Yeah, it's good in every deck. Any white deck, really.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and then we got here Teshar, Ancestor's Apostle, which again was another deck tech that we did a while ago with Bento Box. And then Zack built like a budget version of it that still went the same route of reanimation. So Teshar, Ancestor's Apostle, is 3 and a white. The legendary creature Bird Cleric with flying. Whenever you cast a historic spell, return target creature card with converted mana cost 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. And Teshar is a 2/2. So we can see how good this is already.
This card is so powerful. It is insane. Like I play it in almost all my white decks now because it's insane. Like it just is. When Dominaria was spoiled and like I saw this card, I immediately dismissed it. Then we did that episode with Bento and we got to play against his deck and boy did we get smashed on turn 3
we
consistently.
Got spanked pretty hard.
I built a $50 version of this deck only using commons and uncommons and it's freaking nutty. There's no reason not to play it in this deck. There's just not. A lot of our stuff that we care about, our creatures, everything we're casting is going to be historic. So you just get all the value. And I'm here for the value.
Zack, this next card's all about what you like to play with.
It
Trash
is.
for treasure. 2 colorless and a red for a sorcery. As an additional cost to cast this spell, sacrifice an artifact. Return target artifact card from your graveyard to the battlefield.
It's so powerful.
Bonkers. So, I mean, set up loops. You can set up ETB loops, sacrifice the same creature, bring it back just to do stuff with it.
Well, that's the thing. It's any artifact. You can sacrifice any artifact to get any artifact. So, if you want to be super degenerate, Mycosynth Lattice. If you just want to do silly things like this card is insane. It was another one that I wanted to play, didn't really have a deck for, and finally Osgir was like, here are all these cool cards you want to play, and I am your home for those cards.
In Borhold.
These next two are you guys. I'm not reading anymore.
Oh, okay. Well, we got some treasure. We got some treasure hunter. 2 and a white creature. It's a human, not a construct. When treasure hunter comes into play, you may return target artifact card from your graveyard to your hand. Who knew? In a reanimate pile.
And then you've got your last one, Trusty Pack Beast. 2 and a white for a beast. Still not a construct. It's a 2/3. When it enters the battlefield, return target artifact card from your graveyard to your hand. So I quite like there's a new version in Jumpstart called Trusty Retriever.
Mm-hmm.
I think it does the same thing, but also gives the option of a +1 counter to help with your modular. Maybe a consideration.
Yeah, for sure. These guys, both Treasure Hunter and Trusty Pack Beast, are like pet cards for me. They go in Teshar. They're like Teshar's best friends, and I always have thought Treasure Hunter started, and then he found too much treasure, so he got a Trusty Pack Beast.
I was just going to say that. I was going to be like, I think that Treasure Hunter does need a Trusty Pack Beast.
They're literally the same card outside of creature type and Trusty Pack Beast having 1 more toughness, but it's the same thing. Like any artifact card from your grave to your hand. You can get into loops with Teshar, which I do in my Teshar deck, to be able to reanimate anything that you want. It's just a very good value engine that I think is often overlooked. And anytime I can preach the good word of, the triple T's here, I like to do that. All right, so that does it for our reanimation pile. So now we're going to get into more of our, I think, traditional stuff. We'll go with our ramp. Ramp, I don't think is anything super spicy. We have Arcane Signet to tap, add any color that's in our commander's color identity. Ashnod's Altar, which I think is obvious in this deck. It's 3-drop artifact, sack a creature, add double colors to your mana pool. A lot of our things that we're going to be casting are colorless, so this is
no need for the Phyrexian Altar.
Nope. Burnished Heart is in this deck, but ultimately this will become, especially after playing last night, it'll become Archaeomancer's map, because it's just insane. But
it's a silly card.
Yeah, it's so good. Like I said, this was not edited, or this had nothing added from the precons yet. Moving forward, there's just some I'm going to have to add, because, boy, that precon's good, guys. If you don't like Lorehol, buy that precon anyways, because it's insanely powerful. The one that I'm most excited to talk about is this. It's Karkland Ironworks. It's a 4-drop. It does what Ashnod's Altar does, but you can sacrifice any artifact to add 2 to your mana pool. This just gets out of hand. Once Duretti ulted last night in our game, and I had Karkland Ironworks, I was sacrificing things to just get a ton of value constantly, being able to draw and do all kinds of silly things.
Was not a fan. That's because I wasn't doing too well.
I think everyone was a fan.
I was fine.
Then we have our Soul Ring, our Solemn. Therian Dynamo will also become another artifact or a mana rock from the construct. Is one I was very excited about. It's Curse Mirror. It's 2 and a red for an artifact. You can have it tap for a red, or when it ETBs, it becomes a target of any creature on the battlefield and gains haste on a turn.
Card is so good.
Yeah.
Does it stay as the creature? Or does the creature part go away at the end of turn as well?
It goes away in a turn.
Okay.
Walking Atlas, 2/1/1 construct. You can tap to add or tap to put a land card from your hand in the battlefield. Also good. It's another way Boros Lorehold can ramp in kind of a different manner. And when you have the Archaeomancer's map, this also can be a very powerful thing to do. If you're behind or not behind. And then Wayfarer's Bauble. Just good value. Our removal section, I think, is pretty standard for me. Do you guys want to delve into that one?
So first off, we have Blasphemous Act here, which is very blasphemous, Zack.
I thought we coined that a different name.
I don't remember it. If it
Dan refers to it as Zack's Act.
I haven't heard that one, but I'll give it to you. So it's 8 in a red. It's a sorcery, and this spell costs 1 less to cast for each creature on the battlefield. Blasphemous Act deals 13 damage to each creature. If you're only putting out artifacts, then it doesn't really matter if you have creatures, especially if you can just get everything back.
The next one I'm a bit confused on, though. I'm sure this should be Lorehold Charm.
Borhold Charm?
Boros Charm. Is this a Boros deck?
It is,
Jim,
it
if
is
you're
not.
listening, we need a Lorehold Charm.
Borhold Charm.
But one and a red and white instant, choose one, deal 4 damage to target player or planeswalker. Permanent you gain indestructible to end of turn, or target creature gains double strike to end of turn.
This card's never dead.
This card's so good. Like,
it should be in every Lorehold deck that's out there.
Surprised that Isochronic Scepter's not in here.
I thought about it, but
every turn my stuff's indestructible. Get out of here.
It wouldn't have been for that. It wouldn't have been for that card, though.
I have actually never seen this next card. It's Crush Contraband. It's 3 and a white for an instant. Choose one or both. Exile target artifact or exile target enchantment.
See, this one's still good for its CMC. Like, 4 for an exile effect still isn't even that bad, because there are problematic artifacts and enchantments, but I guess it isn't white. There's much better removal in white, but again, I like exile over destroy.
If this was green, it would cost a colorless and a green.
Yep.
If it was blue, it'd be free.
So in white, I would argue that there aren't better versions of what this card does. Mainly because, yes, we can destroy, but there aren't very many situations where you're getting to be able to exile artifact and enchantment for 4 at instant speed. The card I was going to talk about that this is most comparable to is Return to Dust, but you have to do it at your main phase to get 2. Granted, you can choose 2 artifacts or enchantments. It's when you have to choose one or the other.
Yeah, I didn't see the both on this one, actually. So, yes, I would say the 4 CMC is perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry?
Yeah. This next card, I believe, was also in the precon. It's Dispatch. It's 1 white for an instant. You can tap target creature. But if you have Metalcraft, so if you control 3 or more artifacts, you exile that creature. This could be Swords of the Plowshare. This could be the other one.
But hey, you got the artifacts. Might as well.
And Zack's dead again.
He exiled himself. Zack, are you...
Did you get your basic land while you were gone?
Yes.
Get Osgir to get him back.
So we can get 2 Zacks.
Oh, God. Could you imagine the decks that 2 Zacks could come up with?
Oh, that's funny.
So, yes, Dispatch could be either one of those, but we meet the criteria for this, and it's just a flat outright exile.
Do you know what I like a lot of removal. Like, I'd probably still add in, if I could find stuff to remove, to have Swords to Plowshares and
Path for sure.
Like, I just like to be able to remove. Again, I don't run a lot of board wipes, so I wouldn't maybe not have Blasphemous Act. But that's me. But yeah, no, I like Dispatch.
You know why I'm not running as much exile or multiple versions of that, it's because of this card. It's duplicate. It's a 6-drop. Exactly. It's a 6-drop artifact creature, shapeshifter, 2/4. It has imprint. When it ETBs, you may exile target non-token creature. As long as this card exiled with duplicate is a creature card, duplicate has the power and toughness and creature types of the last creature card exiled with duplicate. It's still a shapeshifter. So this card, while it's not as cheap as Swords or Path, we're going to be able to utilize this much more. Whether we're making multiple copies with Osgir, or maybe we're making multiple copies with Felden, this is going to allow us to do it multiple times. And because it's an artifact, there are plenty of ways to just cheat it out for honestly less than 1 mana. So
for free?
those are my rebuttals to your rebuttals, sir.
This next card is, I think, a white staple. I really don't know many white decks that don't run this. Well, you're wrong, Brian. It is Wrath of God. It's 2 colorless white sorcery. Destroy all creatures that can't be regenerated.
Yep. Just good.
Yep. It's the old standby.
Good, clean fun, right?
Yep.
Very good.
When things get out of hand, call down the Wrath of God.
So there was our removal. So draw. One of my favorite silly pet cards to play that ends up being very, very good is Brass Secretary. It's a 3-drop artifact creature. I'm fairly positive it's a construct, but I can't remember. And it's a 2/1. You can pay 2, sack Brass Secretary, and draw a card. This is just a good card. It's a pet card for me. I found it when I was really getting into my Teshard deck and needing to find like cheap alternatives to how to draw cards. But this card just really have a downside for what this deck wants to do, and it's 2 to draw a card by sacrificing this. So there's a lot of things that can trigger. I like it.
Zack, it is in fact been errated to be a construct.
That's what I thought. I was looking it up as I was talking about
We're staying on theme.
Woot.
Construct tribal.
So next up we got Cathartic Reunion. They don't look that happy, I'll be honest. But we got it's a colorless and a red. It's a sorcery, and as an additional cost to cast a spell, discard 2 cards, and you may draw 3 cards. Again, I don't want these artifacts in my hand. I want them in my graveyard.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Next card is Combustible Gearhulk.
Mm-hmm.
It is 4 colorless, red for 6/6. It is a artifact creature construct. It has first strike, and when ETBs, target opponent may have you draw 3 cards. If that player doesn't, put the top 3 cards of your library into your graveyard, and then Combustible Gearhulk deals damage to that player equal to the total converted mana cost of those cards.
I'd be having my
downside to the. I was gonna say there is no downside to this card.
Yeah, I'd be having my fingers crossed, hoping for those 0 drops.
Yep.
Give me those Cheerios.
I would love nothing more to see this card kill the person that doesn't let you draw 3 cards.
Well,
You're
it's
like,
really
you're at 20. I'll hit you with a Masterwork Colossus, a Mirror Retriever, and Scuttling Doomage.
it's really silly because with Arcbound Reclaimer, for example, you're able to like, are you going to let me draw cards or do I mill? And you can set it up to where you can get, if Metalwork Colossus, for example, is in your graveyard, you can have it do 11 damage to someone because they're like, no, I don't want you to do that. So it's fun. I like it. There's, like you said, no downside.
Nope.
We already talked about Duretti, so we're going to move past him. Very good. And it came in Precon.
Go to Faithless Looting then.
Duretti did come in the Precon?
Yes.
That's awesome.
Oh,
Sorry,
that's
go
pretty
ahead,
sweet.
Lotus.
So yeah, Faithless Looting is a single red sorcery. Draw 2 cards, then discard 2 cards. Flashback 2. We know how broken this is. We love it.
I love it. It makes me happy. And it came in the Precon with the art with one of the best thieves in the multiverse.
Dak Faden.
I love Dak.
Well,
so
the late Dak Faden.
He'll come back, I believe. This next card, I got to play last night. I had kind of trouble getting it online, but when I was able to finally start utilizing it, it became very good. It was very good, just value engine. It's Quicksmith Genius. It's 2 and a red for a human artificer, 3/2. Whenever an artifact ETBs under our control, I can discard it, or you may discard a card. If you do, draw a card. This also comes in the pre-con. It does everything we want to do in this deck. It gives us our card draw. It's kind of frustrating if you don't have cards in hand because you have to discard first to then draw. But still, once you have that kind of like, okay, I have one in hand at the very least, you can start turning through your deck and start filling your graveyard to be able to utilize it. This next card might seem like it's underpowered or like underwhelming, but
Oh, it's not.
it's not.
I play
One-
this in my Cherie deck, and sacrificing it every turn for it to come back every turn to draw a card is it's insane.
So it's Sky Scanner. It's a 3-drop 1/1 Thopter. It's an artifact creature, obviously. It has flying, and when it ETBs, you draw a card. I play this in Teshar. A lot of cards are harkening back to Teshar because it has the same kind of things that I want to do in this deck, but I feel like it can be more powerful because of having the additional color and the abilities that red gives us for artifacts. So we can either exile it for 3 from our graveyard to make 2 and draw 2 cards, or we can make multiple copies of it with different effects in this deck to just draw a bunch of cards. Like, this is just an out. Like, if we need that value and we're not really getting there with Quicksmith Genius, or maybe Dreddy isn't really doing it for us, or we want to like do something else with Dreddy, Sky Scanner can be a way to just utilize that.
And next up, we have the Thrill of Possibilities. What can happen, guys? We got 1 in red, and it's an instant. And as an additional cost to cast this spell, you must discard a card. But you can draw 2.
Yes, it's very on theme for this deck.
It's very thrilling.
The thrill of the possibilities of stuff in our graveyard, or what we could draw.
And then there's a tormenting voice that is in your head, and it is a colorless and a red, but it's a sorcery. But as an additional cost to cast a spell, discard a card and draw 2 cards.
I'll be honest, that is not a tormenting voice in your head. That is a shrieking dragon at my body.
Is that a yeah,
it's something big.
Like, I'll just discard my whole hand and run away.
Yeah.
If this was 2 and it said discard your whole hand, I would still play it. That's probably better, honestly.
Well, yeah, because you just want to get rid of all your artifacts regardless. So it makes sense to me.
Speaking of getting rid of our artifacts, we have Gamble. It's 1 red, and it says search your library for an Urza. And put it directly in the grave. No, I love you very much, Benson. And no, it says search your library for a card, put that card in your hand, and discard a card randomly, then shuffle your library.
I wish somebody would and it would require way too much work to figure it out, but what the odds of you actually just always discarding the card that you search for? Because it seems to happen way more often than it doesn't.
Well, it becomes very easy depending on how many cards you have in hand.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Benson's notorious for like a grip of 7 and pitching the card he goes and
we're just good at picking.
This is true.
There's just no downside for this, honestly. Like, if I'm casting it, I probably don't care what I discard. I might just be casting it to just discard anything in my hand, honestly.
Like, no cards in hand. Go to get something for the bin.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. In this deck,
It just becomes an entomb then.
Yeah.
I got to take this next one.
Yeah, I was going to give you the credit for this. I forgot about this card existing, and Ryan reminded me.
Goblin Engineer is a colorless and a red for a 1/2. Goblin Artificer. So are we playing? We're playing Tribal Artificer Construct.
Yeah.
When Goblin Engineer ETBs, you may search your library for an artifact card, put it into your graveyard, then shuffle your library. Can't talk today. Pay a red, tap it, sacrifice an artifact, return target artifact card with CMC cost 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield.
Yep.
Does exactly what you want it to do in this deck.
Yeah, I get to, like Lotus said, entomb an artifact and then bring back another artifact. It's very good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's got the
So
fancy time spelled remastered old school border, which
I
makes it way
opened
better.
one. I was very happy about that. So the two enchantments that we're running in this deck, or at least two of them, are Anointed Procession, which seems very, very good. It's 3 and a white. If an effect would create one or more tokens under your control, it creates twice that many instead.
So those two, what are they called here? The two
Triniform?
ones that deal 6 damage now become 4.
Oh, Scuttling Doom Engine. Yes, I was thinking Phyrexian Triniform is what
That's
you were
true,
talking
yeah.
about.
Oh yeah,
Or
the golems, yeah. So what we
Oh.
had start with 9, we got 9 golems, and then add another 6 to that, 15 golems.
We haven't
Mere
got-
Battle Spear.
We haven't gotten there yet, but the Illusious Bracers Rings of Bright Heart with Anointed Procession and using Osgir to bring back any of that ridiculousness just goes
Ew.
berserk. That's how my mind thinks.
Lotus, you want to read this next card?
Sure. Pia's Revolution, 2 and a red enchantment. Whenever a non-token artifact is put into your graveyard from the battlefield, return that card to your hand unless a target opponent has Pia's Revolution, deal 3 damage to them.
That's pretty sweet.
Yep, sounds good.
It's just it's just an enchantment in red that's basically Athreos, isn't it?
Yeah. That's why I had to read it. I thought it felt at home for you.
for last night's game.
My Shadow Pawn Apostles that did nothing.
Yes.
This in a roundabout way reminds me of like Smothering Tax and Ristic City. Are you going to take 3? Are you going to take 3? Are you going to take 3?
I need to build a deck that just has all those cards in.
What was that? Smothering Tax? Is this a new card that I'm not aware of?
I said Smothering Tax.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, Smothering Tithe, Ristic Study, all those.
We knew what you meant.
Yeah, but now I want a Smothering Tax.
It's coming. We've got Monologue Tax and Smothering Tithe. We just need to combine the two of them together.
So moving down to one of the last two sections we'll talk about. These are just, I call them artifacts because I didn't really have a home for them, and they all basically do the same thing. The first one is Helm of the Host. It's a 4-drop legendary artifact equipment. At the beginning of combat on your turn, create a token that's a copy of equipped creature, except the token isn't legendary. If the equipped creature is legendary, that token gains haste and it equips for 5. We can just get another Osgir, or we can literally get any of the other annoying things that are in this deck. It's either value or problems. Either way, it's good for us.
Yep.
Then we got the Illusionist Bracers for 2 artifact equipment. Whenever an ability equipped creature is activated, if it isn't a mana ability, copy that ability. You may choose new targets for that copy, and the equip cost is 3. So getting 2 triggers of Osgir?
Yeah. There is a red version of Illusionist Bracers that comes in the Commander Precon. Like I said, this was all built without Precon cards and before the Precon was spoiled, so I had no clue that card existed. I will most likely...
Braces?
Yeah, I can't remember. It does the exact same thing as Rings, but for 1 less. And it only cares about creatures, not anything that Rings cares for. But I will probably put in this deck. I just have to find a thing to cut to make it make sense, because I don't really want to cut any of the cards in this section. This next card was also in the Precon. It's Mirror Works. It's a 5-drop artifact. Whenever another non-token artifact ETBs under our control, we can pay 2. If we do, we create a token that's a copy of that artifact. Note that it just says artifact. It's not artifact creature or creature. It's artifact. So in a roundabout way, we do run the 3 artifact lands in this deck. They are also in the Precon. So we can ramp in a weird way. It's basically a rampant growth for us, right? Or we just make another Stuffy Doll, or another Steel Overseer,
or another Rings of Brightheart.
I don't know. Like it's just the ceiling for this card feels very high to me. Does someone want to take Rings?
Yeah, we've mentioned it enough. So the next card is Rings of Brightheart, which is 3. 3 colorless, it's an artifact, and whenever you activate an ability, if it isn't a mana ability, you may pay 2. If you do, copy that ability. You may choose new targets for that copy. Which, this is bananas. There's just so much copying stuff, and I'm happy that you didn't get any of these last night.
Yeah. I feel like we still have to talk about the lands, but I feel like the ceiling for this deck is very high. What I really like about Osgir is there a bunch of different ways that you could brew this guy. This is just the route that I went. I very much love playing out of my graveyard and copying things, and this was the first time I could do this effectively, in my opinion, in the colors. Like, I don't like red and white on their own. Now, because of Strixhaven, there are 2, maybe 3 other Lorehol commanders I want to brew because this school really gave us something unique to deal with, really unique to play with. So we're not going to go over all the lands, but there are a few lands I want to talk about. The first one is, I'm going to talk about 3 because they're essentially the same thing. We have Ancient Den, we have Great Furnace, and we have Darkstill Citadel. They're all 3 artifact lands. 1 taps for red, 1 taps for white, and 1 taps for colorless, but it is indestructible. So like I was saying, there are things that care. Obviously, you guys have heard there are things that care about artifacts just being on the battlefield, or when 1 ETBs, or even with Mirrorworks. When these guys are our land drops, we can do a bunch of silly different interactions with them, and I really like that kind of stuff. For more recursion, we have Buried Ruin. You can tap it for a colorless, or you can pay 2, tap and sack it. You return target artifact card from our graveyard to our hand. We have Inventor's Fair. It's a legendary land. At the beginning of your upkeep, if you control 3 or more artifacts, you gain 1 life. That is going to trigger pretty often. Like, this is going to incur, just give us value over the long run. You can tap it for a colorless, or you can pay 4, tap and sack it. Search your library for an artifact card, reveal it and put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. You can only do this if you control 3 or more artifacts. This is just a tutor. I don't run a lot of just straight tutors, but it felt like this land was just way too good not to run in this deck.
It's a shame that it doesn't come in the pre-con.
Yeah, I was pretty bummed because just going off of the list pricing for this, it's $35.
Holy crap, I didn't know it was that expensive.
Well, this is the list pricing. The list is always, not the list. It's the list, mystery booster, whatever.
Yeah.
Those are a different breed of card because they're considered more like this version of it's harder to find. I don't know what the normal version is, but I am bummed that this didn't come in the pre-con because it should have. The lands were actually very good, but I felt like this was kind of like a no-brainer and should have been included.
Well, it's one of those that they're not easy to find, so just getting more back into the hands of the players seems like a good idea.
Yeah.
Right.
Also, you could run. There's a new one that you can run from Cowtime as well. Axeguard Armory.
Mm-hmm.
So that one, I know you're not running it, but you can pay 4 mana, 1 red, white to sacrifice it. Search for an aura or equipment card. And it puts it in your hand. So, I mean, Rings of Bright Hearth or something. Not Rings of Bright Hearth.
The Illusioner's Bracers or the Host.
The Illusioner's Bracers, Helm of the Host.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like I said, there's the other. I think you might have read it or named it. The other bracers that came in the pre-con are also equipment, so that's actually very viable. Before this, I really didn't pay attention to red and white, so if it had red and white, I didn't look. So thank you for helping me out there, Lotus. This land came in the pre-con. It's Rogue's Passage. It's tried and true for our format. Tap it for a colorless, 4 tap it, target a creature can't be blocked this turn. Slayer's Stronghold and Sunhome also came in the pre-con. I was very surprised to see them, but Slayer's Stronghold taps for a colorless. You can pay red and white, tap it, target creature gets +2/+0 and gains vigilance and haste until end of turn.
So 11/11 becomes a 13/11, and then you with the Sunhome, let's give it double strike. Yeah, it's 22 or 26 damage on the stack, or not on the stack, but coming at you.
Yeah.
Oh, I wish the stack.
Same.
I couldn't. I don't know if I could keep up with Magic if damage was back on the stack, but
You would have loved it when you could resolve in batches.
I love like put combat damage on the sack, then sacrifice a creature to do something. Or that's great.
Seems crazy, but that's so that is the deck. I'm very happy with how it turned out. I feel like this deck is even more accessible with the precon, because the precon, to my surprise, had a lot of these cards. I was so relieved and happy that Wizards went this route, because I feel like it's a route they needed to go. It's not your typical what you expect from Boros. Like we said that in the podcast, and if you haven't listened, like when we talked about the spoilers for these, we really like talked about how the schools were set apart from the guilds. They do not play the same. There are similarities, obviously, because they're in the colors, but ultimately, you're going to be able to say, hey, if you're playing a Boros deck, kind of what to expect. If you say, hey, I'm playing a Lorehol deck, you also have some different expectations, and that's good. I love that. I feel like this is a deck that can sit down at a lot of different tables and not feel like it's being like pushed out very easily. There's a lot of recursion, a lot of redundancy, a lot of ways to just gain value over the long game. So if you're starting off kind of slow, this deck can steamroll kind of later in the game or middle of the game. But you can also have a very fast start. When we played last night, my opening hand was land, Soul Ring, Arcane Signet right off the rip. And that was just a good hand, but it's possible to do that kind of stuff.
It's a beefy hand.
It is.
Yeah, his very first draw was the Soul Ring.
On both games too. When I played Essex, it was also the same way.
Nice.
Some things. Oh, go ahead, Lotus.
You have two of the three things you like doing in this deck.
Yes.
I know that you can't do the steal effects because red is a temporary steal.
Don't give him ideas, Lotus.
Do it.
However, you can steal in mono white, and it's permanent. So, Debt of Loyalty was one I would probably recommend just to complete things you like to do.
The trifecta.
The circle.
It's one white for an instant. Regenerate target creature, then gain control of it.
Oh,
I like that. I like that a lot.
I do think it is an older card though. Like they're not.
It is reserve list.
Yeah,
but it is a cheap one.
Jim, if you're listening.
Okay, I lie. It's now $30. It's not cheap anymore.
That's still not horrible.
So like part of where I was talking about some different ways you could go with this deck, something I thought about doing before I really came to this brew, and by before I mean like 10 minutes before I was finally like, nope, this is what I'm doing. I did have Zealous Conscripts. I did have Sundial of the Infinite. I had Kiki Jiki and a couple other things to just make copies steal. But that's, like I said, it's not what I end up doing, but I'm very excited about the card that you named, because that's something I would actually see having a place. Like maybe I would cut Blasphemous Act and put that in, because I like that effect a lot more.
See, my janky nature would be something like liquid metal coating, steal someone's thing, make it an artifact, sack it to my commander.
I thought about that too. That's what I really, and that's what I was like getting at. That's what I really like about this commander and what you can do with this deck specifically, is that you can liquid metal coating and not have to do anything busted, but you can do so many fun things. You have a lot of different ways you can feed it to your Ashnaughts, feed it to your Arcbound Ravager, feed it to your commander. Like there are just a lot of really fun things. Now, the thing that this deck can suffer from, obviously, board wipes can put you behind. We have a bunch of different ways to really recover from those nicely and maybe start back quicker than other decks. Exile effects, we suffer from, obviously, like most other decks are going to. Pull from Eternity can help that, but we don't have a lot of ways to really get Pull from Eternity back. And Graveyard Hate is going to be rough. Like a lot of the decks that I build, I try to make it so that I can recover from Graveyard Hate, but I suffer from it. You Rest in Peace me, Bajuka Bog, anything like that, it's going to be kind of hard to deal with. We have outs being in white to be able to handle the enchantment graveyard hate that normally my black decks can't really touch. So that is a plus in this deck. I think you can. There are some combos that like I wouldn't play them as you could infinitely, but you could take those out and maybe put some more slower cards in or some like flashier cards to scale the deck down. But you can also supercharge this deck, I think, very quickly. There are a lot of things that I'm playing that are not as optimal as they could be because that's how I wanted to brew the deck. So Osgir is definitely one of those. I don't know that it would be what you would see at a CEDH table, but I would argue that the shell of what this deck does and the colors and the value you can get from Osgir, you could run it at a very, very high power level and not get bullied at the table.
Unless you're facing fractals.
Yes. Unless you face fractals.
In typical Zack fashion, a pro and a con that I will give this deck. The pro is I have a copy of Lorehol pre-con sitting at my FLGS right now waiting for me to pick it up. The con is I have a copy of the Lorehol pre-con sitting at my FLGS ready to pick up. Like I had it initially just meant to get the other 4 decks because I was really not interested in this. And then Zach's hype train took a detour right through my house and picked me up, and I'm on it.
Look, I hate Boros, but man, I'm backing Lorehold super hard. If you would have told me, if you would have told me that for this, like not knowing anything about the decks beforehand, you saying like, hey, there is a green black, a white black, a green blue, a red white, and a red blue deck coming out, and you would have told me that I was getting the red white deck before any of those, I would have called you probably a couple different rude names because there's no way I would have believed you. Seeing this commander, like I hope and I pray that we keep getting more stuff like this for the colors because this has me so excited. I have been so pumped to play this deck, to brew this deck, to build it, to just open red and white cards from this set.
I've always found like Boros was a cheap, efficient creature beatdown deck with a potential artifact or like equipment sub theme, and this is none of that.
Yeah, like I took my Teshar deck, the things I like about it, and I made it do more. I made it be more flashy, which is I feel like what red is good at, right? When I think red, I do think of flashy, like mean aggressive cards, and Hellkite Igniter is all of that, and it makes me happy. Do you guys have any pro or cons that you want to throw out, or any other like closing thoughts about my deck?
So for me, to have a red-white Reanimator-esque deck to be able to be used in those colors is absolutely amazing. I was very excited the first time that we actually did this recording too. Like it completely blew me away. Like I was very excited, like very happy with any deck that you come forward with, Zach. I'm always excited to see because the way that you build and everything like that is just always a great time to hear your excitement and go through the deck list with. And I enjoyed playing against this deck last night. Like it put in work, it did things, it went up against multiple double-digit fractals, I guess is what they're called. I just kind of sat there and twiddled my thumbs. But no, this deck looks great, and I look forward to playing more games with it to see it, and hopefully not get hit with an 11-11. But I know with my hate, I'll probably I'll be the taste tester for it.
But that's what I appreciate about you.
Yeah, I thought so.
Is that all you appreciate?
He's our crash test dummy for
I'll be the stuffy doll.
Lotus, do you have any inputs or any thoughts?
So I like that people are now starting to see how good white is. I have been trying for so long to say that white isn't as bad as people keep making it out. It's just you're using white wrong. And this deck just shows that you can do a lot. Yes, it's got help from red, but there's a lot in here that is good. My only criticism is there's not enough counter spells.
Normally I don't like countering stuff. I want you guys to have your fun.
It's not a part of the 3.
I like to kill your stuff so I can steal your stuff.
That's fair.
I do. There is something that I forgot to mention, and I have to pull. Sorry, I have to grab my deck so I can tell you guys. Second Sunrise, I could not get a copy because my LGS didn't have it. And with me getting commander decks and playing Digimon, I didn't really have the ability to get some of these cards. So there are two cards I wanted to touch on very quickly before we finally close out. It just came to me last minute. So Second Sunrise was going to be another reanimation card that I didn't have. So it became, from the precon, it became Wake the Past. It's kind of expensive. It's 5 red, white. It's a sorcery, but it says return all artifact cards from your graveyard to the battlefield. They gain haste this turn. They gain haste until the end of the turn.
That's pretty good.
Which, a one-sided reanimation effect, even that expensive, and it gives them haste, seemed very, very good to me. And I was actually excited to run it instead of the...
Well, if you're sacking everything to Clark Clan and making the mana, it's not that bad. Because you'll get it all back.
True.
Some more reanimation that I wanted to try out, because I was missing another card, and I can't remember what it is, and I don't want to take up too much time, was Reconstruct History. It's a sorcery. It's 2, a red and a white. Return up to 1 target artifact card, up to 1 target enchantment card, up to 1 target instant card, up to 1 target sorcery card, and up to 1 target planeswalker card from your graveyard to your hand. You exile Reconstruct History. Like I said, the deck that you see before you, I didn't do any edits to. We played a game last night, and I needed to fill some slots because my order didn't come in. But this card just was in the pre-con, and I think it's in the it's in the main set as well. And it is just nuts. Like 4 calls to do any of that, and you can get all of it. In this deck, we can literally get one of each of those permanent types back from the grave to our hand. And the last card I want to just skim over is Lashil, I think is how you say it. Clockwork Scholar. It's 2 and a white for a 2/4 legendary creature, Elephant Artificer. Prevent all combat damage that would be dealt to attacking artifact creatures you control. Whenever 1 or more artifact creatures ETBs under your control, draw a card. This ability triggers only once each turn.
Oh, that's just Dolmen's Gate on a creature.
But being able to draw cards in mono white, and it's once each turn. Yeah. And it's ETB, it's not cast. So once I got to Duretti, his ult, and I was suddenly Clark Clan Ironing Works, my Wayfarer's Bauble. That was a card each turn. So those were just a couple things I wanted to skim over very quickly because I felt like I would be remiss not to. But I think that does it all for us today at the Into the 99 podcast. Please, if you like this deck, tell me why you like it in any fashion. You can find me at NekroZach on Twitter and Instagram. If you hate this deck, you're wrong. So I don't want to hear about it. If you're building Osgir or any of the other commanders, please reach out to me and let me know, because I'm excited to talk about Magic all the time. If you would like to support us in a more monetary fashion, we have a Patreon where the 3 lovely people you see here have done amazing things to the tiers, and Benson is also chopping up cards and saving cards to send to our patrons as well. Do you guys want to add any more? Because I'm blanking on some other things.
We have 2 additional shows that you should check out. We have Parallel Thoughts with the guy right below me, Zack and Benson, who's sadly not here. I wonder if he's given Dan that true love's kiss yet. And then we also have Parallel Thoughts, which is every Sunday at 4 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, hosted by our very own Lotus, which is to my left.
I don't do Parallel Thoughts. I do Brewing It Live.
Yes, Brewing It Live. There we go. And as well, if you want to get into the 99, or not just get into the 99, but wear it, you can check out our merch store, where you can find lovely merch that helps support us.
We also have our Commander Precon League coming up. It starts in just
next
over... is it? Yeah, it starts
11
next
days.
week 11 days. You still have time to sign up. It's completely free. There's a bunch of awesome prizes we're going to give away, and all you need to start the league is a brand new Precon deck from anywhere in Magic's Commander history.
And it doesn't have to be brand new. You can literally get all the singles from that deck, so it's cheaper, which is what I did.
Yes, you just have to have a unedited Precon deck.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And we put all the lists on our website, into99.com, so you can check which goes in it.
What else can they find at into99.com, Lotus?
You can find articles, other podcasts. You can find past Brewing It Lives and all the rules to the Rise of the Precons.
And with that, everybody, have an excellent day.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, guys.
Bye.